Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the Powerful Referrals webinar. With me is the talented John Davis, handsome as well. Not quite as handsome as me, but you know, what are you going to do? Anyway, thank you guys for joining us live. Those watching on the recording, I guess it'll also be fun for you. I'm going to try to get this done in an hour. We have a ton of content. Really appreciate y'all joining, and we'll kind of just rock right into it. So, a little bit of housekeeping here to start off with. Throughout this whole thing, you can actually put your questions on the chat here if you are signed into the live stream, and I should see them. Hopefully I'll see them. Otherwise, I'll also be checking my email. You can email your questions to townsendward@gmail.com. I'll have that on the bottom of a bunch of these slides. Please include your name if that's not obvious in your email address. I'm going to try to answer all of your questions. At the end, we'll have some formal time for questions, but more than happy to answer questions throughout the whole process here. What would be awesome is if somebody who is online, like maybe Leanne, hi Leanne, thanks for joining, could just tell me if you've got a good sound and good picture quality. That'd be great. After the end of this little live stream here, I will be sending out the recording, copy of the recording, a link to a Dropbox folder with the presentation and some fun bonuses, if you will. Just a reminder, not selling anything here, so you feel free to stay to the end. If you need to leave, that's fine to get the recording, but this is a purely content webinar, and we're gonna rock and roll through that. Hey, got some good folks joining us. Andy, nice to see you. Andy, let me know if you can hear me okay. That'd be great. Just shoot it to the text. That'd be fantastic. So, for those of you that haven't read the bajillion emails that I've sent, the objectives are pretty simple, and we'll talk about how this all got started again. Want to share John's experience and results and over the last few weeks. We're going to talk about the specific approach that I use, that John has used over the past couple of weeks, and talk about really why that works, why it's different. Because I do think it's important to understand what's going on, behind the scenes, right? Referrals are one of those things that everybody does and everybody knows are important in selling, but oftentimes they don't get quite the same results, and I think it's important to know why. And then, of course, make sure you guys have access to the scripts and all the stuff we use. So keep in mind, everything that is going on the screen today, you will have access to in a Dropbox, this presentation, all the templates, so you can furiously scribble notes if you like, but don't worry, you'll actually get access to all the native documents. That'll be fantastic. Great. So a quick note. I actually added this slide at the end, and I'll let John introduce himself in a minute. He does actually speak and stuff.
Sometimes.
He's pretty cool.
For a living.
For a living, actually, right? You make money doing that.
Right.
One of the slides that I added actually just about an hour ago was, as I was thinking through this whole process, the concept that came to my mind is that if people were thinking about referrals like, I don't know, 20 years ago or even 5 years ago, where a referral was something you said to somebody, hey, do you know anybody? This is not going to work, right? This process is not about that. And I would even say that, in this day and age, the concept of what I call undirected referrals is ludicrous. To simply approach somebody and say, if you happen to come across somebody who needs what I do, please let me know, is absurd.
A little silly.
It's a little silly. In the age of social media, in the age of LinkedIn, where you can literally go into somebody's profile, find specific prospects that you want to be introduced to, which I call directed referral. The concept of sitting back and saying, yeah, you do my selling for me is kind of interesting. So yeah, go ahead and give me a call. So this entire webinar is really about how to do what I call directed referrals. And that is to identify people in your network, right? Using a tool like, say, I don't know, LinkedIn, something crazy like that. And look at their contacts and say, I want to meet with this person, this person, this person. Can you introduce me? This whole process is about facilitating that. It's not about creating this generalized, gosh, people will just send me business kind of concept, because I just don't believe in 2016 that really works. All right, good notes. People are hearing us. Fantastic. So this is John Davis. John, why don't you tell me a little about yourself, how we met, and I don't know, whatever you think is interesting.
Yeah, so I met Townsend, 10 years ago?
Something like that.
Went through one of his kind of sales boot camp classes. I've been in sales ever since, but most recently for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been in the recruiting industry, which is extremely competitive. There's especially in Denver, the market's just inundated with firms like mine and other guys like myself.
What's the unemployment rate in Denver just in general? Is like what, 4 or 5%?
In tech, there's
2%, 3%.
If that.
So tough business recruiting. Good choice for you.
Yeah, it's tough, and there's a lot of companies out there that need our help, but there's too many of us to offer that help, so nobody knows really where to go. So I really rely on referrals and recommendations and that sort of inroad to a company in order to work with them. Otherwise, I'm just another recruiting firm. So
I always think about recruiting as it's kind of like being a mortgage broker. Like anybody can do it, right?
Yeah, they don't have to pay you any money until you come through for them. So anybody's like, yeah, you can work with us or whatever. But it's it's kind of backwards as far as that goes.
Pretty hard to differentiate.
Right.
Yep. So we met. It says whenever that was back in October. I don't know. It's just sort of a catch up call, what have you. Talk a little bit about what was going on at that time.
Yeah. So my pipeline was kind of dry at the moment. I actually just started with a new company relatively recently, so trying to drum up some new business and just seeing as competitive as the market was really trying to work the referral network, and it felt like it was working because I was getting a lot of yeses. At the same time, there wasn't any result.
Had
meetings.
You tried some just standard cold calling, trying to get in the door with people? Yeah,
and I still do. I mean, it's still part of my day. But
who's your target prospect? Who's your target title that you go after?
Typically, any director level and above in IT. So
they love answering their phones.
Oh yeah, they love it.
Yeah,
then they always do, and they're always willing to meet with me.
Yeah, not so much. So referrals are pretty important. Having introduction is pretty important. But you were setting out referral. I mean, you were working your referral network. I mean, obviously, we've talked about referrals before.
Yeah, I had a lot of lunches and coffees and that sort of thing, like you said, where they're more than happy to go through my LinkedIn and tell me who you want to meet with and who I can introduce you to. And I said, great, sounds good, I'll do that. And then we part ways, and nothing ever comes of it.
So a couple things here, a couple bullet points. So you were actually doing the work. You were reaching out to referral sources. They were meeting with you. They were talking with you. They were saying, yeah, this sounds great. But you weren't actually getting any connections to people that you needed.
Right.
Okay.
I went so far as to send them short but spreadsheets of like, these are the 5 to 10 people that I want to meet with. Can you please help me with that? And it still wasn't. It was very targeted, but it still wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, I remember when we met. It was pretty. You were pretty frustrated in terms of I've been doing all this stuff, and I think my comment was.
Well, you asked me how many meetings is that generated. I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, none. So
feels good though. Everybody says yes.
Everybody says yes, right? So, but they weren't following through.
Right.
After the nice lunch you took them to, what have you, the emails weren't getting returned, the voicemails weren't getting returned, and the other thing I remember you talked about was they would get back to you and say, "Oh yeah, I talked to that guy or that woman."
Right.
And they said
they don't need that right now. Or
they don't need it, right? So all that work was still resulting in a no meeting.
Right.
This to me may be the most important slide in the whole deck, right? Because what I tried to do was capture visually what is the problem, what are the biggest problems with the way that people typically go about referrals, right? So as you can read right there, I'm not having to read and stuff off slides, but every step in the process creates the opportunity for a dropped ball, right? Any follow-up action required could not happen because somebody doesn't want to, could also not happen because they forgot, lots of different reasons. The second problem, which you talked about at the end when you said people were coming back and saying, oh, they're not interested, is ultimately leaving the job of introducing you properly to the referrer is just plain silly, right? They're the least suited to present you. The other problem that I've identified in the past is there's a tendency on the part of the referrer, your referral partner, to hesitate to send you a bad referral, right? People always think about referring as, well, maybe they're going to be reluctant to refer me. The reality you have to really grasp is they're also reluctant to put you in front of a bad referee, to use that word. So they do a lot of thinking about, is it a good fit? I can't tell you how many times I've been on calls with folks and they say, well, let me think about these folks and talk to them and see if they're a good fit.
Right.
Well, that's qualification. That's my job, right? So ultimately referral stuff is about creating an introduction where I can get in front of that person as quickly as possible, right? I'm the one best suited to present my message, present my value proposition. I'm the one best suited to qualify them, see if they're a good fit. So, this is a standard process, right? Will you introduce me? Sure, I will, right? Then they send some sort of email or communication to the referee. Well, they may not do it until they meet with them. They may forget, right? Hey, I have this buddy that does X. Well,
if you ever need that, let me know and I'll introduce you to him.
Yeah. And typically how that's how it's set up.
That's how I do it. If somebody says, hey, introduce me to that person.
That's right.
That's right.
We'll talk about this in a little bit, but the concept of creating a referral based on the service you provide, right? So if somebody called me and said, hey, I have a guy who does referrals, does recruiting things, starts with an R. My immediate answer is, I'm all set, right? So I'm not even having the opportunity to meet with you. I'm not going to let you into my network. I'm not going to agree to meet with you because I have that category filled. Probably safe to say that there's not a single IT director or manager in Denver that doesn't have at least 5, recruiters on speed dial or that are hammering all down. So,
or they get 20 to 50 calls a week.
Yeah, they get calls from people all the time. So assuming the referee says, oh yeah, I'm actually looking for somebody, that has to go back to the referrer and then it has to come back to me, right? Most oftentimes it's not interested, but this is a 4-step process, right? So if you just look at the hops in here, it really is 4 separate steps. As we'll show later, the process that John used actually cuts that down quite a bit, and we'll talk more about that. So I wanted to share an example. I got an email not too long ago from somebody who I know for a company that I actually know really well. And let's you guys take a moment to read this because it's pretty interesting. So David Bradford is a very well-known venture capitalist entrepreneur in the Utah area. He actually sits on the board of DemoChimp. Right? Most people have heard of DemoChimp. They're kind of a demo software tool, what have you. This on its surface to me looks like a really good referral email, right? It's from somebody I know. Do you know them? Right? Ends with a very strong call to action. Would it be okay if I introduce you to Matt? Well, the problem is this feeds right into the little diagram that we were talking about before. If I am at this very moment in time wrestling with demos, right? If that's a pain point for me right this moment, then I might actually reply to David and say, sure, sounds great. In which case he's got to go back to Matt, send an email to Matt, send it to me, and get back to me. The problem is when I got this email, that was the last thing on my mind, right? I had 10 other fires burning, etc. Improving the quality of my demos is not really something I'm interested in. One of the things I really want to get across is the concept that selling, and most people on this conversation know that selling is about the confluence of need. What are you looking for? And timing. Do you need it right now? In the process of setting up referrals, if you link the referral to the product or service, you are dependent on, is it something they need and is it something they need right now?
Right. If
you link the process of referrals to, I want to introduce you to my friend John, you probably don't need what he has, but you guys should be connected and at least exchange business cards. You think about like a networking event or like a networking contact, it changes the context of the thing. So that to me is an example. This to me is an example of a really well-written email that honestly went in my, I haven't deleted it yet. That's the funny part. It's still in my inbox, and I'll talk about that. So most of what you did was over email, right? Almost all of the appointment setting, et cetera, until you got the meeting. Because we're talking about email, I think it's really important to understand how people deal with email, right? So I was going to flip over to my email application, but I think you guys can pretty much figure it out on your own. The concept is people get, I don't know, how many emails you get a day?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
50 to 100. Probably.
50 to 100. I probably get 75. I regularly talk to, people in my situation, maybe a VP of sales or what have you. They get 100 to 200. A manager, a director of IT, 100 emails on a slow day. So people no longer deal with email as I get it, I deal with it, I respond to it, right? It's become more like a stream medium, kind of like almost like Twitter, right? You don't click on every freaking Twitter thing that comes by. You might catch something, but mostly things just keep scrolling and scrolling.
Facebook.
Yeah, same thing. You scroll, if something catches your attention. So fundamentally, with email, there's three modes. I'm going to delete it. Crap. Right? I want it out of here now. I'm going to deal with it right this minute. I can answer yes or no. I can do something quickly, or I'll deal with it later. Right? The email from mom, the email from your friend from college, the email from your, we're having a potluck next week. Right? That's a deal with later. The problem is, in your email application, you've got a window like this big for new emails. If you got 100 per day, you're deleting all the crap. The deal with nows are getting dealt with. The deal with laters are going below the fold. Mm-hmm. They're not getting seen. So even when John sends an email and somebody goes, oh, it's John, I want to help him. If the email is not actionable, if the email does not allow for an immediate action, something you need right now, going back to this little example, it goes in the deal with later pile, which means it goes below the fold. I wish we could do a little survey or something of how many people or how many emails in their inbox people on the call have, because how many emails do you have in your inbox? Quite a few. Yeah. I'm obsessive compulsive about my inbox, as you can imagine.
I don't like unread emails.
Yeah.
Even if I just click it. And then...
Yeah. Well, so there's unread, but they're still in the inbox.
Oh, yeah. I have no idea how many are in there.
So if I have more than 100 emails in my inbox, I start to sweat and twitch, and I get really unhappy.
So you have to get rid of them. Okay.
they're gone. Like there's a great video out there. It's called Inbox Zero, which is it's the methodology for handling emails. But the idea is that if people use their inbox as kind of their storage and queuing system for emails, the problem is once you have like 200, 300 in there, it becomes useless. Right. So I try to keep no more than 20 or 30 emails in my inbox. I either deal with them, delete them, move them, etc. Mm-hmm. But for most people, that's not the reality, right? It's, oh yeah, that's John. I'll get back to that. That means Saturday morning, Sunday morning, reading the paper when I'm burning through some stuff, I'll try to get it done. Well, it may not get done. So this is going to be really important as you look at the emails that we set up, the emails that John sent, and kind of what they look like. All right. So the golden rules of referral selling, pretty simple, right? Pretty simple. 4 things you need to remember. First is make it easy. Minimize the steps. 4 steps, the little diagram I showed, it's too many. Second is make it easy for them. Anything in the process has to be something that they can do with a minimal amount of clicks, minimal amount of editing, right? So even when John and I were talking and you were originally saying, hey, why don't you introduce me? Mm-hmm. Something simple like, what was the email that they were going to send to the referral partner? They had to figure it out. They had to write the introduction.
Or they'd ask you, like, well, what do I tell them to do? Or what do you want
exactly,
me to say?
Exactly.
And it still puts it in their hands. So.
Yep. The other 2 things are pretty simple but pretty important. Make the entire concept not about your product or service. Nobody should be introducing John as a recruiter because you need a recruiter. He's a great recruiter, because there's lots of recruiters and people can't tell the difference between recruiters.
Right.
It needs to be, this is my friend John. John is a good guy. He also happens to be a recruiter. You guys should be connected in a professional sense. John is not going to call you on the first conversation and pitch you on his recruiting prowess. He asked for an introduction to you. So changing the whole dynamic away from, here's somebody I'm referring for a product or service. You're probably too young for this, but back in the day when I started selling, we would go to these leads groups. You ever go to a leads group? Oh, okay. So you're not too young.
Yeah.
Maybe they still do that.
Bring one, put the $1 in the cup, and
they still do that shit. Oh my god. Anyway, that's fantastic.
Very long.
Yeah, no, it's awful. Anyway, so for those of you that may or may know, you basically go to these leads groups. You have like a bunch of people, like 10 or 12 people. You meet once a week or once a month, and everybody has to bring a lead for everybody else. It's a lead for the product or service, right? Oh, I found somebody who needs copiers. There was always copier people.
Copiers, like realtors,
all sorts of wacky stuff. So anyway, the whole shift here is that what you want to do is you want to create a referral, a directed referral for the individual. I want to introduce you to my friend John. He saw your profile on LinkedIn. He's quite interested in meeting you and make it about a personal referral, and that's gonna work better. All right, let's dig into the process. Kind of talk about the steps, and hopefully we're gonna have a bunch of time for questions here. We're moving along quite quickly, which is good. All right, it's a pretty simple 5-step process. We're gonna go through these in detail, and I want to just kind of give you a high level concept of what it looks like. And this is all the process that leads from reaching out to your referral partner and all the way to the point where you actually get a meeting with your referral prospect. So step 1 is identifying the referral partners, meaning who do you think can provide you referrals, right? So for example, I might say, Andy Scantlin's a really good guy. He's on the call and he knows a lot of folks and I like him and he thinks I'm a cool guy. So I'm gonna ask him for some referrals. Now, rather than just calling Andy and say, hey, how's it going? You know anybody who needs my stuff, right? I'm gonna call him up and say, hey, Andy, I've spent some time on LinkedIn. I've gone through your contacts because we're connected, and I've got some people who I would really like to be introduced to. I think they might be a good, prospect for me. I think they, might be somebody that I could do business with in the future. Would you introduce me? Right? Actually do it by email, not talk to them. But the point is, I'm not simply asking Andy to do the work for me and think about it. I'm going to his contacts. I'm using some of the search functionality in LinkedIn to identify who I want to talk to. Now, you were doing some of that already, right? So what's your typical process for identifying prospects associated with people that you know on LinkedIn? How do you go about doing that?
It's almost 100%, LinkedIn and just looking at their connections on LinkedIn and going through that. Typically doing a search,
right?
Especially those, search those titles, either director, vice president, CTO, right. Whatever, C-level. And
so pretty easy to do on LinkedIn. Just run a search query and
right.
Yep. Okay.
Right. Come up with 5 or 6 and say I'd like introductions to these people.
Yep.
And then forward that along.
Cool. So we don't really talk about this a lot in this webinar, but the idea is you're going to have to sit down and spend a little time identifying people you want to talk to, via the people that they are connected to. So once you've got that list, what you're going to do is you're going to send your referral partners a request, a simple email. We're going to go through the template in a minute. Literally, the template you can cut and paste, put it in there. John and I worked on it. It's been working pretty well.
Yep.
They will respond, hopefully in the affirmative. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm happy to do that. It's a simple request. The third step is you're then going to send the referral partners the list of the prospects and the templates that they can use, right? It goes back to making it easy. You're literally going to have them, having already agreed to send the referral or make the introduction, you're going to send them the names and the email that they can literally cut and paste and dump in there. And I'll show you the template in a minute. The referral partner is then going to send a mutual introduction, right? And this is really the key part. This step 4 really matters because rather than saying, go talk to them and then get back to me, what we're asking them to do is send this email, and I'll show you the email in a second, copy me on that email so that I can interact directly with them. And that was one of the biggest kind of game changers, right? When you were doing this, because you were relying on them to get back to you and do all that. And then if necessary, you'll send a second attempt to the prospect. I think I don't know, that's right. When a referral partner responds, send the introduction with suggested times, right? So after the referral partner sends a mutual introduction, Andy says, Townsend meet John, John meet Townsend, and then they're out of it. I can now interact directly with John. Right. I will send John an introduction email with suggested times for a meeting. And this is very key. So many times in referral kind of stuff, what people do is they leave things open-ended, like, hey, I'd love to meet. How does that sound? Right? The answer is, sounds great, right? Or I ask you worse. I said, hey, send me some suggested times. So now John has to check his calendar, see what's working. I want to make it super easy. So I'll show you this and it'll make more sense in the email. And then if necessary, sometimes I actually have to follow up with that the prospect and say, hey, I sent you some times. Did you get them? Do you still want to meet? So I think it'll make sense when we go through the email. So we'll go a little slower on this part. I was kind of concerned coming in that we would be like way over time, but I think we'll be pretty good. A quick reminder, if you guys have questions for myself or John, simply email them to me. I should be checking my emails, what I should be doing to make sure that they're actually coming in. But please do send those if you have any questions. All right. So the first email you're going to send, again, is from myself, from you, to the person you're asking for some referrals, right? So pretty simple. We're sending an email that says, hey, I got a favor to ask, and literally we wrote in there yes or no. That seemed kind of a cheeky thing to do, but I'm a big fan of making email subjects very actionable, right? They need to know that a yes or no response, literally all they need to do with this email is hit reply and click yes. We want them to hit yes, right? So to their name, I'm reaching out, I have a favor to ask. As you're probably aware, and again, your text, your particular message is going to change. This is specific to recruiting, but we kind of try to make it a little fun and interesting. I've identified, and number means like 3, 4, 5. Typically, when you were sending this, how many prospects had you identified that you were going to ask them to introduce you to?
Probably identified that I wanted to meet with probably between 5 and 10, but I narrowed that down to maybe 3 or 4.
So you would basically say, hey, I got 3 or 4 people I'd like an intro to. Yeah, and that seems totally reasonable to me.
If I said 10, it'd be a little weird.
Well, it'd just be a lot, right? I mean, it'd be like maybe overwhelming. Like if somebody says introduce me to 2 or 3 people, no problem. If they want to send out 10 emails, now you might go back to them, right? Yeah. So anyway, my request is, would you be willing to provide an introduction email? I would, of course, provide their contact information and a draft email you could edit to your liking. Looking forward to hearing from you. That's it. This is simple. How many of these did you send out in the last, whatever it was, 12 days or so?
Between 10 and 15, probably closer to 10.
Okay, so not a lot. Used the template. Wasn't a whole lot of thinking on each one. Didn't have to rewrite reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So, assuming they came back and said yes. Now, I had a question asked actually. If they didn't respond, and some didn't respond to this at all, right?
For the first one, I'm not sure I had anybody not respond to the first one.
So basically, everybody you said, would you introduce me, said yes or no.
Either yes or yes, but I want to do it this way, or I'm okay with introducing you, but I'd rather do it a different way.
That's not bad. That's 100% response rate. That's good. And I think for this exercise, John really targeted. You targeted some people you knew pretty well.
And current clients.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I would expect a high response rate. If you're targeting people on maybe a more arm's length basis, probably wouldn't expect that high of a response rate. You also may have to hit them with a second email, right? Hey, resending the email I sent. Maybe it got lost in your inbox, kind of thing. I don't have a template for that, but it shouldn't be that hard to figure out. Okay, so assuming they came back and said, yes, happy to help out, this is the email you sent. And it's actually it's across 2 slides, so bear with me. I wanted to make the font big enough. So basically, this is the response to, yes, I'll help you. Again, subject lines really, really matter. I know that everybody on this live stream broadcast gets tons and tons of emails in their inbox. You get tons of stuff from people marketing to you. The most effective emails are those that are very specific and tell you exactly what you should be expecting, what you need to do about it in the email. So the subject line of thank you, names, and email to forward says, oh, this is a follow-up to that other thing. So once again, here's your name. Thanks for being willing to help me. These are the people that caught my eye. Now, here's the key part. What you don't want to have is somebody come back and say, oh, well, I don't know that person, right? Because they might not, right? Part of the problem with LinkedIn is you can have, I got 2,000 connections. Yep. You probably have 1 million. Part of the problem could be that they say, well, I don't really know that person that well. Well, that's okay. We want them not to kind of get stuck on that hump and not worry about it. So really what we said is, hopefully the people you know, even if they don't, we have a second version of the template in case you don't know them, right? All I'm asking you to do as my referral partner is cut and paste this email, hit send, and be done with it. I don't actually care if you know them or not, right? In fact, it actually works even if you don't know them, right? That's a surprising thing for some folks. If John knows Bob, and I say, John introduced me to Bob, there's a really good chance, Bob's going to take my call. If John doesn't know Bob, but John's connected, as long as John's honest about that, there's actually, using this process, a really good chance that they're gonna take my meeting. So here's the first part of that, where you basically say, here's the name, here's the company, here's the email. Now, initially, one of the things you came back and said, well, how am I gonna get their email? Right? And what was my answer to that?
You're a sales guy?
You're a sales guy. Figure it out. It can't be that complicated. Now, obviously, if you don't have somebody's email and you just can't get it, just write in there, hopefully you have their email or find it on LinkedIn. But to me, it's absolutely absurd. In this day and age, if you can't figure out somebody's email, either from their contact info on LinkedIn, figure out what company they work for, figure out the email construct, do a little bit of work. It's not that complicated.
Right.
Again, I can say, hey, John, maybe you have their email, but that means John's got to go look for it, find it, see if he has it. Most people are not that organized. So I'll tell you, you put their email in there, you are dramatically increasing the probability that they're going to simply say, oh, great, cut and paste the email, cut and paste the text, move on with life. So do the extra work. Hopefully these are 5 people that you really want to meet with. At the end, we're going to show you a bunch of results of what John did, really. And I think what's going to astound you is how little work this was, how little time it took, and how many meetings he got, and how much money that actually means if you turn that into business.
Right.
So do a little bit of work. Again, anything you do to make it easy for your referral, your referrer is going to pay huge dividends. So this is the second half of that email. So this would be included at the bottom of the other email. What we actually have are 2 templates, again, that they can cut and paste for themselves. One is a draft email for a connection that they know. The other is one that they don't know. I don't have that up here, but it actually is included in the Dropbox, and you guys will have that template. But so it's kind of a long email for them, but we divide it really nicely into sections where they've got, here's the opening paragraph, and then here's the template that they can actually cut and paste. So this is what they would cut and paste to introduce John to somebody else. So-and-so, I'm writing to introduce you to John Davis. John's a business associate. In this case, we put as well as a personal friend that may or may not fit. John asked for an introduction so we could reach out to schedule a brief phone introduction. Maybe I shouldn't use the word introduction twice, but it didn't seem to be a problem. This is really important. What this says is, even though I'm sure you already have somebody for whatever the heck he's selling, I know a brief call would at least ensure the 2 of you were connected, right? This email is positioning John as a personal introduction, somebody that, we want to be in each other's Rolodex, so to speak. It's not positioning you as the world's greatest recruiter, right. which you are.
There's no pitch.
There's no pitch at all, right? It's simply a personal introduction. It mentions it mentions the fact that he is in the recruiting space, but I can't stress enough that if you structure your referrals based on the product or service you're trying to sell, it's going to dramatically decrease your effectiveness versus simply saying, I want a personal introduction. Trust me, I'm confident that when you have a meeting with somebody that I've introduced you to, you can position what you do, you can differentiate it. I don't need to do that. I'm just saying you guys should chat, right? A little bit of context. the meeting that John is going for is not a sit down, right? Let me come in and show you the 20-page slide deck on my company and benefits, right? Your initial conversation with somebody I'm referring to is what? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's really just figuring out their business and what they do professionally and introducing myself. And if it makes any sort of sense to work together or not, maybe I can help them, maybe they can help me.
So typically do it by phone or in person?
Phone. Yeah. It's a 10-minute phone call.
It's a 10-minute phone call, right? You guys that follow my stuff regularly know that my entire definition of prospecting is converting an interruption to an initial scheduled conversation. That initial scheduled conversation is not 30 minutes, 60 minutes. It's 10 or 15 minutes.
Right.
I know I can convert a 10 or 15 minute scheduled conversation on anyone's calendar into a follow-on meeting.
Sure.
Right? With very high certainty, 70, 80% of the time. I'm not worried about impressing them, intriguing them, pitching them, etc. I'm simply trying to get a contact, get the first conversation, be on their calendar, and schedule a follow-up meeting. So this process really fits well into that. Mm-hmm. So again, in the email template that is in the Dropbox, there's a second version on this that also says draft email for a connection you don't know, with a little bit different language, but you can read that on your own. Okay, so now John has asked me to refer him to somebody. I've sent an email to the somebody that he asked me to refer, and I've copied John, right? And I think hopefully we said that here. Yeah, John is CC'd on this email, so I'll let the two of you take it from here. I'm out. John and let's call it Susan now have direct contact because the emails are all on there, right? Mm-hmm. Reducing the steps, making it easy. Easy for me as the referral partner, easy for John. So this is simply John clicks reply all. When John sees the email come in from me introducing him to Sally or Susan or whatever I said, he says, great, time to do my reply all, and I'm going to use this template, right? Hey, John, or Towns in this case, thanks for the kind introduction. Hey, Susie, nice to meet you. I look forward to meeting you eventually, but would like to suggest a brief call to introduce myself, right? You might even put in there a brief 10 to 15 minute, mm-hmm. phone call. In fact, I would do that because it really makes it seem low stress for them. Right. Best availability for me is, and you provide specific times. I can't, it absolutely drives me nuts when people don't provide specific times. Mm-hmm. Think of the logistics of it. If you say, I'd really like to meet, let me know what works for you, you're going into my deal with later pile. Right. Plain and simple, right? It's, oh yeah, that sounds nice. Townsend knows John. Why wouldn't I meet him? All right. I'll deal with that later when I'm doing my emails on Sunday morning. If John says, here are some times, right? Then, and by the way, in terms of subject, you don't need it because you're replying to something already. But if John sends specific times, I can literally, Alt Tab or Alt Tilde or whatever I'm using over to my calendar, check those slots and come back and say, Wednesday at 2 works great. Mm-hmm. All right. Actionable. Very, very simple. The hit rate on emails like this is very, very high. What do you think, 50%, 60%, mm-hmm. something like that?
Yeah, and even if you do like Wednesday afternoon, you still create another back and forth. So a lot of people do like the specific, what about Wednesday afternoon? Okay, well, what time? Then you have to go back. So
yep.
Yeah, the very specific time as well.
So what John's saying is a lot of people in their emails will suggest not specific times, will say in the afternoon. Right. What I'm saying is an exact time on your calendar. Don't give them, now, what if somebody can't do 1 o'clock, but they can do 1:30? Well, they're going to come back and say, I can do 1:30. How many times does that happen? Does somebody come back?
Honestly, 80% of the time, they probably say 1 o'clock Wednesday or whatever.
Exactly. Especially if you're booking a week out or something. Most people, if you look at their calendar, this week it's a mess. Next week, it's not a mess yet, but it will be by Monday. So they got a lot of white space in there. So suggesting times is very, very powerful. Reminding you guys, you got questions, email them to me. I'm trying to check my email box here and make sure I'm paying attention. We got a question. That's good. I'll take a look at that in a second. All right. Sometimes they don't respond to this email number 3, the initial request. My belief is you send them at least one more. It's a simple email. Typically, I will send it. Obviously, these dates aren't any good, but I will send it on the last day that I had previously suggested. Right? So typically, if I'd suggested some specific times for you, and by the way, just as a note, I don't create 3 specific times, and I hope you don't either, for everybody to send this to. I basically pick some times on my calendar, and everybody that comes in that day, they get the same times.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right? And then if one is taken, I can always come back and say, actually, that's taken. Could we do another one? But the point is that sometimes you have to come back to folks who haven't responded to that, and I at least recommend one more attempt to say, again, a different subject line, intro from referral partner name, intro from Townsend, second attempt. Hey, Townsend introduced us. I sent you a few suggested times. Haven't heard back. I will tell you that using the initial email requesting times and this, it's very rare that I get no response from a referral partner, unless it's somebody that my referral partner or referral prospect, my referral partner really didn't know, has no idea who they are. I almost never get somebody that completely just bails on me. Almost always with this second email, I'll either get the response of, "Oh, really sorry, I dropped the ball. Send me some more times," or "Yeah, I'm just swamped. Can you hit me up next year?"
Right.
Particularly this time of the year. I'll tell you
next year.
A lot of next year. So, well, you said you're already setting, meetings off of this process for next year.
Yeah, January.
Yeah. So that's the other thing is don't be afraid to throw out, times there for, second week of January, right? People hate to actually put stuff on their calendar for the next 3 weeks because they're really busy at Christmas parties and being hungover or whatever. But, they know they're going to be sitting there in January with not much to do. And more importantly, nothing's on the calendar. So it can't hurt. All right. I got a question. I'm going to read this one here. I'm starting a new company in a new industry. Do not yet have many contacts aside from a few key accounts I will acquire. How do you suggest I know somebody before asking for referrals? Well, I'm going to ask that question this way and saying that.
How well do you suggest? Okay.
How well do you suggest I? Oh, okay. How well?
Right.
Okay, got it. That's a great question. What's your thoughts on that? Right. So, how well do you need to know somebody before you ask them for a referral?
Yeah, the way that I did it obviously was a little bit easier because they were either my client or personal friend. But I think if you acknowledge it, listen, I don't know you that well.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's some ways I can help you out as well. But I went through your LinkedIn page and I saw these people that et cetera. That might be a way to go about it, as long as you don't just send them an email like know the guy.
Yeah, like your best friends. Yeah. Well, my reaction to that is that fundamentally in this approach, I'm not asking you to introduce me and vouch for my services. I'm not asking you to say, "Oh, this is John. He's my best friend," and he's placed a bunch of candidates with me. You're simply saying the truth. Hey, John and I are connected on LinkedIn. We've had a couple of interactions together, and he approached me saying, "Would you introduce us?" It sounds kind of hokey. It sounds like it's really thin, but people still respond to it.
It's still honest. It makes sense too.
It's honest, and it's still an introduction. So I would say you don't have to know people really well. I've gotten a ton of requests on LinkedIn from folks just saying, "Hey, I see you're connected to this person. Would you mind introducing us?" What's funny is people still use the thing on LinkedIn where you can get somebody else to introduce you via LinkedIn, like to connect with them.
Request an intro or whatever.
Yeah, it's like just have me send you. Yeah, that's what I would think. So, great question. Keep them coming. We're gonna have some time. All right. So I'm gonna let you talk about some of the results and just kind of walk through what's happened since you kicked this whole process off.
Yeah. So honestly, as we talked about, I didn't get to devote that much time to it because I ended up getting busy and working on some in the recruiting industry. Once I get business, that means I have to go fill it. So there wasn't a lot of front end pipeline filling at that point. But I probably spent a total of 3 or 4 hours doing this over the course of a few days. Total, which meant typically with 1 or 2 contacts going through their LinkedIn, which is it's kind of cumbersome on LinkedIn because you don't look at 10 at a time when you're going through somebody else's. So it takes a little while in building a list and then kind of narrowing it down to, okay, I want introductions to these 3 or 4 people and then sending that over. So that was probably the bulk of the time that I spent. But really before I did that, I knew that there was people that I wanted introduction to. So I sent that initial email saying, "Hey, would you mind doing this? I've identified a few people." As I sent that email, I'm identifying those people, and then that's kind of the work piece of it. After that, it was rare to get a no. I think I got 1 no, but I'd rather introduce you to people a different way. But yeah, I think the people that did, kind of go through the process, and didn't derail it a different direction. I think 8 out of 11.
So give me an example. You mentioned that some folks said, "Hey, I'm happy to refer you, but I don't want to do it the way you're suggesting."
Sure.
So what did people say?
Honestly, that was more of my personal friends that were like,
right.
"Man, this is too formal. I'd rather just, let's go out for a beer or something like that instead." So
they just wanted the beer.
Yeah, right. And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I get it."
Interesting.
For the more professional relationships, though, they were all about it. So
gotcha. Okay.
The no's were honestly from my friends versus the people that I didn't know as well.
Interesting. So you really haven't gotten a no from somebody other than your friend who just
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
Or, I had one guy say that he used to do that with his business partner as kind of a joke, so he'd ask for a referral. It's kind of like sticking a sales guy on him. So, so he's like, "I don't want to do that with this particular person, so let me just talk to him first." But
that's a little anomaly.
But those are really the only 2 no's that I got. Other than that, at least through the first email, it was a yes.
Got it.
Almost, so probably 80%.
Cool.
Yeah, and then from that, I think I ended up. There was a couple that didn't get back after I sent them the list, but I think it was 6 out of 8 of those people then forwarded along that email, or maybe it's 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. Several of those people forwarded along that email. I think I ended up getting 6 or 7 meetings out of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what we talked about earlier was of the 11 you sent, 9 actually said, sure, I'll do something. So a couple disappeared or said no, or what have you.
Right.
4 actually have followed through so far. I'm assuming the other 5, you're going to go harass them at some point.
Correct.
And go after them. And they've actually sent a total of 8 referrals so far. 5 of those have already met. What about the other 3? Are they scheduled? Have they said no, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so they've been 5 I've actually met with, and then I have a couple scheduled for like January.
Okay, yeah. And that totally makes sense for this time of year. So 4 actual opportunities identified so far.
Correct.
What's an opportunity worth in your world, right? To your company? I mean,
so it depends on as far as recruiting. It's
sure.
You don't make one sale and move on. It's an ongoing thing, but I usually consider a good opportunity somebody that I can place 4 or 5 people with, and to me that means between probably $10,000 and $25,000 of commission. So
per person?
No, that's
okay.
Placing say 5 people over the course of
but so
6 months to a year.
You close a couple of those deals, and that's $50,000 or something.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I don't feel bad not paying you for being on this webinar. Then that's good.
Right.
Yeah. So the whole point is, and the takeaway for me was, there's a little work at the top of the funnel, like doing some research and figuring it out. A couple hours. If you're willing to put in that work, everything else is really formulaic.
It takes care of itself.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of work. And frankly, if you could build a list of, 50 referral partners and start doing like 5 a week, you're just simply slotting this stuff in and keep more consistent. For better or worse, you are getting busy. You're having to do some placements. So, the challenge for you will just be kind of keeping this going.
Yeah.
Had a good question come in, which said, so essentially this process is asking a buddy, or somebody professionally for a favor. Should you also include something about the potential value to the end referral, he said partner, but he means prospect, right? Something that sets John apart or adds value. The short answer is absolutely not, right? The whole purpose is, and frankly, that's what you were trying to do initially, was to say, here's why you should introduce me, because I'm a better recruiter, right? Take everybody in your network and ask them to, take 5 recruiters, which one's the best? Nobody has any idea, right? Until you're dealing with a recruiter, they all look the same.
Right.
So, and I think recruiting is a great example, and one of the reasons I was really excited about doing this with John is this is probably the toughest environment, right? Because people get hammered with recruiters all the time. But fundamentally, the whole concept of if you move this to I'm going to try to give you some language that will allow you to pitch me, right, and differentiate me, you kind of go down this slippery slope of, it's a vendor call, right? The entire
it's a turnoff.
Yeah, talk more about that.
He was that's kind of that joke that I was talking about that my referral partner was talking about playing on his business partner was, I'm going to send you this guy who's going to pitch you, and you read the top of the email and it's very genuine, sincere. I want to introduce you to John and everything. And by the way, here's what he does, and here's a paragraph on a pitch. It's like, you got me there. It's just kind of a negative turnoff in a way. It's like it takes it from genuine to and here's his pitch. Yep.
Yeah. We got a good question, which I'll let you think about for a second. I'm gonna go to the next slide, but Kelly's asking, so what happens? And we'll answer this in a minute. What happens when you actually talk to the prospect for the first time? What are you trying to accomplish? What does that exactly sound like? So we'll do that in a second. I just want to give you some warning. So we want to talk a little bit about where the challenge is still, right? So obviously not everything worked perfectly. This is the first time we're playing with this. Where did the ball get dropped? So what you shared with me was there were instances where the referral partner still said, yeah, I'll do that, via email, and they just didn't follow through, right? So that's a follow-up issue. For better or worse, people are people, and they'll always say things and not do them. Maybe it's the timing, maybe it's the end of the year. I imagine an email in January saying, hey, you told me you'd introduce me, you didn't. As long as you're comfortable sending that, then you'll be fine. Do you think that's going to be rude or uncomfortable to say to folks, you told me, you'd introduce me and I haven't seen anything? Or
not at all. No.
Cool.
I don't think so. I mean, we already talked about it, right?
We talked, they
agreed,
agreed,
forget about stuff. Like, I would even say, I know that second email that I sent you, it was probably a lot to read.
Yeah.
Because it looks long.
Yep.
That could have been why, it kind of got swept under the rug, but.
Yeah. John talked a little bit already about the referral partner objections, right? Approach is too formal. Hey, I don't really know that person. Hopefully we've mitigated some of that with the email template. you haven't had any, I don't know you well enough, but I imagine if you do this at scale, you will get some people that say, well, I don't really know you, so I can't refer you. And that's fine. Maybe it's time to take that person out to lunch if there's people that you really want to, or schedule a call with them and have a real conversation. And then possibly there's the folks that want to control that, right? There's still this this tendency of folks say, I want to control my referrals, and I don't want to create a direct relationship because I'm scared that you're going to be the wrong person or they're going to be the wrong person or both. And then of course you obviously and you sounds like you haven't gotten a lot of these, but I know from experience there are standard objections from the prospects, right? I'm too busy, not interested, we already have a recruiter. Those you have to handle, right? You got to handle those anyway, and I talk a lot about that in my my other cold calling stuff, etc. I will point out that 100% of the prospects that John has been introduced to have responded. 100%. That doesn't suck.
No, it's good.
That's pretty good. All right, so let's talk about that question. So the prospect says, yes, I'll meet. It's set up as a 10 or 15 minute. What do you do in that conversation? What does that sound like? How do you open it? Try to give folks a sense of that.
Yeah, so when I talk to somebody that, the first time, after this, I tell them the reason why I asked for that referral.
Okay.
I kind of read about what you do. I have no idea whether it makes sense for you to work with me. I just know that in the market that I'm in, it's very tough to get an introduction to somebody, but just want to learn a little bit more about your business and see if it might make sense to at some point work together. If not, it's no big deal.
Yep.
But
so kind of setting them at ease, setting the stage. I'm not trying to.
Sure.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's definitely not a pitch.
Okay.
Maybe find out about what they do, and they already know what I do in a way, so it's definitely not a unique sort of solution. But I might share some typical frustrations, which are my frustrations as well, because there's a lot of recruiters out there that make the rest of us look bad. And, so share some of those things, see if they resonate, and then see if it might make sense to.
I mean, in a way, it's
face.
Okay. So for you, the next step is, if there's any sort of connection or interest or what have you, meeting face to face.
Sure.
Are you trying to get a deal out of them right now?
No.
Okay. I think that's important to really grasp is this is about relationship building, right? One of the things that I'm always fond of saying is, my customers come as a result of relationships built over months or even years. Right? The purpose of my call is not to pitch you and get a deal and get a rec today, if I'm talking recruiting stuff, but to get to know you, see if there's any high level fit, and begin the process of getting to know you. That so that someday when you need something, I might be somebody you call.
Right.
Very very non presumptuous, very non salesy, right? I imagine that's received well by folks. Yeah. Right. I mean, what's a general reaction?
Especially in my field where they're so used to getting pitched and so used to recruiters saying I'm a better recruiter.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of nonsense. There's
Can you think of any recent examples of people who have noticed that approach and kind of given you some feedback on that, and share anything that you've heard? So when you're having these conversations, anybody said how have people reacted specifically?
Yeah, it's like it's funny because they're expecting you to, but they almost come to the call prepared for your pitch.
Right.
Like, okay, I got this position. We're gonna work on that. It's like, whoa, back up. Like I didn't even want to talk about this stuff.
So you'll kind of shut them down. Yeah.
They come to the call like ready to tell me about the openings that they have, and I'm like, I don't even. It's great. Like I appreciate you coming prepared with that, but I don't.
That's not why I was calling.
Yeah, I just want and it lines up with the initial email that was sent.
Yeah.
I was looking for a personal introduction, learn a bit about you, see if it might make sense to work together, and we can always talk about that. But initially, I had some general questions. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful technique, right? And if nothing else, I mean, people always talk about how do you differentiate yourself from your competitors. The simplest answer is don't do all the crap that they do that everybody hates. Yeah. Right? If you want to differentiate yourself, do stuff that's different, right? If you say, I'm better, we do this, we do that, well, that's what everybody else does. It's just, I can just talk louder. But fundamentally, behaving differently in that conversation, demonstrating a real interest in their business, a real care for them. I imagine you ask folks, you work with other recruiters, what's working, what's not. Right? I mean, I'm sure that people have horror stories.
Sure.
Right? Getting people to share with you what don't they like about what they're doing, right? Not in order to sell them and pitch them, but in order to really build a relationship with them.
Yeah, it creates good conversation too. So.
It's a heck of a lot better than pitching and just doing a demo.
Right.
All right, I got basically one more slide before questions. If you guys have them, you can email them. I'll stay on here as long as you like. John will stay here, hopefully as long as I like. But if you have questions, feel free to email them in or text them in. What you will be getting after this, as soon as I can download it and upload it and do my YouTube stuff, is I'll send you a link to the webinar recording so you can watch, listen, do it over, share it with your friends, over the holidays, gather the family around and watch this. Maybe not. I'll also send you a link to a Dropbox that'll have the presentation It also has in there, I did a while back, it was basically my referral toolkit, if you will. So there's a whole nother presentation in there you can check out with a bunch of more templates and stuff. I'll send you all the email templates that I showed you here. There's also another document in there that's actually all of my best email templates, all my scheduling, all my rescheduling, all that kind of stuff. And then there's some other bonuses and crap in the folder that I don't remember what I put in there. But and of course, you have questions, you can email me them at any time and just send me a note and let me know I can help. So I hope this has been valuable. I hope you guys got some good stuff out of that. It's pretty straightforward. I guess the thing that surprised me or that was most interesting was this was pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
Right? From a couple weeks ago when you're kind of banging your head against the wall to like, oh, I just sent it out. Like, you literally don't have enough time now to screw around sending emails and meet with people.
Right.
It's not a bad position to be in.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was I was just winging it every
Yeah.
single time, before, and just to assign a process to it. And then, like we talked about, the only thing that really took any time was perusing LinkedIn to find out the people that I wanted to be introduced to. After that, the process literally, it's just dominoes. So
yeah, I can't imagine this is something you're going to spend more than a couple minutes a week on if you're actually doing it. The biggest thing is going to be perusing LinkedIn, maybe even as somebody indicated, taking the time to find people on LinkedIn with a good network and doing a little more upfront work. And by the way, you can use this approach and these email templates to get referral partners, right? People that I use essentially the same approach when I'm out there trying to find people on LinkedIn who may even be a contact but I don't really know. I'll use the same approach where I'll just kind of tweak this a little bit and say, hey, we're LinkedIn buddies. I want to grab 10, 15 minutes and introduce you or introduce myself and learn about what you do. And I'm not calling to sell or what have you. Obviously, what I'm playing for is a month later, I'd love to send them a note saying, hey, by the way, can you introduce me to so-and-so? I just, in that case, didn't feel like, I could go right out and ask them for an introduction. So you can use all this same approach to get more referral partners or to get closer to your relationships on LinkedIn. It's funny. I do a lot of these webinars and a lot of my sales process stuff. The common thread, and for me, this is absurdly simple, is that the less I worry about how do I sell somebody something, and the more I worry about how do I just increase my network, have more interactions with people, and have conversations, the more stuff I sell, the easier it becomes, right? So that's kind of the big takeaway here is stop worrying about selling all the time. Have some conversations, schedule some time, get to know people, and amazing things happen.
Right.
All right, that's it. We're going to sit here and stare at the monitor for a minute if there's no more questions, because you guys are on a lag and you don't even know it. But let me know if there's any way you can help. And if you got more questions, I'm sitting here hitting send and receive. Otherwise, we're just going to stare at you.
Best part.
It's the best part, yeah.
It's creepy.
It's kind of the end of the show at Anchorman when they turn up the volume and they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
But they can hear us saying that, so
right.
it's not as funny. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us, and have fun.